The silent armada, the void between stars, had never felt more alive with death. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the command deck of the UES Prometheus, her dark eyes reflecting the holographic displays that painted a picture of devastation across 3 star systems. At 38, she had commanded humanity's most advanced warship for only 6 months, but those months had aged her years. The weight of what she was seeing now threatened to break something fundamental in her understanding of warfare. The Kalari homeworld floated before them, or what remained of it. Once a jewel of crystalline cities and floating gardens that defied gravity itself, now it was a graveyard of molten glass and radioactive storms. The Kalari had been peaceful, their technology focused on art and harmony rather than war. They had welcomed visitors from across the galaxy with open arms, sharing their knowledge of quantum harmonics freely. Now their songs would never grace the cosmos again. Lieutenant Commander David Park approached her station, his Korean features tight with controlled emotion. The young officer had proven himself countless times, but nothing in their training had prepared them for genocide on this scale. "Captain," he reported, his voice steady despite the horror they witnessed. "Scans confirm no life signs on the planet. The entire population of 12 billion gone. Radiation signatures suggest the attack occurred less than 72 hours ago." Sarah nodded slowly, her fingers dancing across her personal console. The Prometheus was more than just a warship. It was humanity's greatest achievement in military technology. 1.5 kilometers of adaptive armor and weapon systems that could think and react faster than any human crew. But even with all its power, she wondered if it would be enough for what was coming. "Show me the fleet movements over the last month," she commanded. The main holographic display shifted, showing dozens of systems in their sector. Red markers appeared one by one, each representing a world that had gone silent. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Something was moving through the galaxy with methodical precision, destroying everything in its path. Marcus Thompson, the ship's chief science officer, had been working at his station for hours without rest. His British accent carried a note of exhaustion as he reported his findings. "Captain, I've analyzed the energy signatures from all affected systems. Whatever's doing this, they're not using conventional weapons. The molecular structure of matter itself is being disrupted at the quantum level. It's like they're unmaking reality where they strike." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The galaxy had known conflicts before. Wars between species were not uncommon, but they followed rules, unspoken agreements about the preservation of worlds and civilians. This was different. This was extermination without purpose or demand, destruction for its own sake. "Any communication attempts from the affected worlds before they fell?" she asked. Lisa Rodriguez, the communications specialist, shook her head. Her usually cheerful disposition had been replaced by grim determination. "Nothing coherent, Captain. Just fragments." The word silence appears repeatedly in the final transmissions. Some mentions of ships that don't register on any known configuration databases. And then, nothing. The bridge fell quiet as everyone processed this information. 43 worlds had gone dark in the past 2 months. Each had been a thriving civilization, some with histories stretching back millions of years. The Altrurians with their underwater cities, the Nexari with their hive minds that created poetry through collective thought, the Gorvans who had mastered stellar engineering. "All gone," Captain Park interrupted the silence. "Long-range sensors are detecting something. Multiple contacts heading this way. Distance 2 light hours and closing fast. Too fast for conventional drives." Sarah straightened in her chair. "Battle stations. All hands, this is the captain. Unknown contacts approaching. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The ship's lighting shifted to combat red as alarms echoed through the corridors. Within seconds, the crew of 800 moved with practiced efficiency to their positions. The tactical display zoomed in on the approaching contacts. What Sarah saw defied conventional understanding. The ships, if they could be called that, were perfectly smooth spheres of what appeared to be liquid metal. No engines, no weapons ports, no communication arrays. They moved through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. Thompson's voice cracked slightly. "Captain, those things are moving at 30% light speed without any detectable propulsion. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would require a star's worth of power." "Yet there they are," Sarah replied calmly. "How many?" Park counted the contacts on his display. 217? No, wait, 230. They're multiplying somehow, splitting like cells. Sarah made a decision that would change the course of human history. Open a channel. All frequencies. Let's see if they want to talk. Rodriguez worked her console, opening every communication protocol humanity had ever encountered or developed. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Prometheus. You are entering a protected zone. State your intentions. Silence stretched for long seconds. Then, without warning, every display on the bridge flickered. A sound filled the air, not through the speakers, but seemingly from inside their own minds. It wasn't words, but rather a sensation of absolute emptiness. A void where thought and emotion should exist. Several crew members grabbed their heads in pain. "Cut the connection," Sarah ordered. Rodriguez complied instantly, and the sensation stopped. "Medical teams to the bridge," she added, seeing some of her crew struggling to remain standing. Whatever these things were, they communicated through methods humanity had never encountered. "Captain," Thompson called out, his equipment showing impossible readings. When they responded, if we can call it that, they sent something through our communications array. It's a virus, but not electronic. It's targeting our neural implants, trying to create a connection directly to our minds. "Disconnect all neural interfaces immediately," Sarah commanded. "Go to manual controls only." The crew rushed to comply, pulling out the small chips that normally allowed them to interface directly with the ship's systems. It would slow their reaction times, but it might save their minds. The sphere ships continued their approach, now only 30 minutes away. Sarah studied their formation, looking for patterns, weaknesses, anything that might give them an edge. They moved like a school of fish or a flock of birds, turning in perfect synchronization without any visible communication between them. "Park," she said quietly, "have you ever seen anything like this formation in nature?" The lieutenant commander considered for a moment. "Actually, yes. It reminds me of a murmuration of starlings. Thousands of birds moving as one without any leader, each responding to its nearest neighbors to create complex patterns." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "And if they're all connected, sharing one consciousness across multiple bodies, then attacking one would alert all the others instantly. They would adapt, learn, evolve their tactics in real time." The realization hit the bridge crew simultaneously. They weren't facing a fleet. They were facing a single entity with hundreds of bodies. Every ship that had fought it had taught it how to be better at killing. By the time it reached Earth, it would have learned from the destruction of dozens of civilizations. "Captain," Rodriguez reported, "I'm receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Foster wants to speak with you immediately." Sarah moved to her ready room, a small office just off the bridge. The holographic form of Admiral Foster materialized before her. The older woman's face was grim. "Captain Chen, I'm ordering you to return to Earth immediately. We're consolidating all forces for a final defense." Sarah shook her head. "With respect, Admiral, that's exactly what this thing expects. Every civilization has done the same thing, fallen back to defend their homeworld. And everyone has failed." Foster's expression hardened. "You have one ship, Captain. One ship against hundreds, one ship that hasn't been studied yet," Sarah countered. "Admiral, this entity learns from combat. If we fall back to Earth with the entire fleet, it will learn how to defeat all our ships at once. But if the Prometheus can engage it here alone, maybe we can find a weakness before it adapts to everything we have." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "You're asking me to let you throw your life away on a gamble." "I'm asking you to let me give Earth a chance," Sarah replied. "The Prometheus has capabilities no other ship has. Our adaptive armor, our quantum processors, our experimental weapons. If we can't stop them, at least we can learn something that might help the fleet." Foster closed her eyes, the weight of command evident in every line of her face. "You have 12 hours, Captain. If you haven't found a solution by then, I'm ordering the fleet to retrieve you whether you like it or not." "Understood, Admiral." Sarah saluted as the transmission ended. Returning to the bridge, she found her crew watching her expectantly. They had heard enough to know what she had proposed. "Anyone who wants to transfer to the escape pods, now is the time," she announced. "No judgment, no shame. This isn't what any of you signed up for." Not a single person moved. Park spoke for all of them. "Captain, we knew what we were signing up for when we joined the Prometheus crew. We're humanity's sword and shield. If not us, then who?" Sarah felt a surge of pride for her crew. "Very well. Let's show these spheres what happens when they threaten humanity. Thompson, I want you to analyze every piece of data we have on their movement patterns. Park, prepare all weapon systems, but don't power them up yet. I don't want to give away our capabilities until we have to. Rodriguez, monitor all frequencies. If these things have any kind of individual communication between units, I want to know about it. The bridge became a flurry of activity as the crew prepared for a battle unlike anything in human history. The sphere ships were now 15 minutes away, their smooth surfaces reflecting the light of distant stars. They had begun to spread out, forming a net that would be impossible to escape from. Sarah stood at the center of it all, her mind racing through possibilities. Every great victory in human history had come from understanding the enemy, finding the one weakness that could turn the tide. But how do you fight an enemy that learns from every attack, that shares a collective consciousness across hundreds of vessels? The answer, when it came to her, was so simple she almost laughed. You don't fight the vessels. You fight the consciousness itself. The human Gambit Thompson, Sarah called out, her voice cutting through the bridge's controlled chaos. Can you track the quantum entanglement signatures between the spheres? If they're sharing consciousness, there must be some kind of connection we can detect. The science officer's fingers flew across his console, equations and readings scrolling past faster than most could read. His eyes widened as understanding dawned. Captain, you're right. There's a quantum field connecting all of them. But it's not emanating from the spheres themselves. It's coming from somewhere else, somewhere beyond our sensor range. A puppeteer, Sarah whispered. The spheres aren't the enemy. They're just the weapons. Park, prepare a probe with our most sensitive quantum scanners. We need to find the source of that field. The sphere ships had stopped their approach, holding position just outside of conventional weapons range. They hung in space like droplets of mercury, perfectly still yet somehow menacing in their stillness. It was as if they were studying the Prometheus, learning about it before the battle even began. Captain, Rodriguez reported, I'm detecting a change in the quantum field. It's fluctuating, almost like it's testing our defenses. Every system on our ship is being scanned simultaneously. Let them look, Sarah said with grim satisfaction. The Prometheus had been built with deception in mind. Half of its apparent systems were dummies, false readings designed to confuse enemy scans. What they're seeing isn't what we really have. The probe launched silently, too small to be noticed among the debris of the Kailari system. It shot past the sphere formation, its quantum scanners searching for the source of the field that bound them together. Minutes passed in tense silence as data streamed back. Marcus Thompson suddenly straightened, his face pale. Captain, the probe found something. 40 AU out, hidden in the system's Oort cloud. It's massive, nearly moon-sized, but it's not showing up on any conventional sensors. Only the quantum scanners can see it. On the main display, the probe's data formed an image that defied understanding. It wasn't a ship or a station. It looked almost organic, like a vast brain made of crystallized dark matter, pulsing with quantum energy. Tendrils of invisible force stretched from it to each sphere, puppet strings made of folded space-time. My God, Park breathed. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Sarah studied the image intently. That's our real target. The spheres are just its hands. We need to cut the strings. Thompson, what would happen if we disrupted that quantum field? The science officer ran rapid calculations. Theoretically, the spheres would lose their coordination. They might even shut down entirely. But Captain, the amount of energy needed to disrupt a field of that magnitude, we'd have to overload our entire reactor core and channel it through our main cannon. It would destroy the Prometheus. Sarah nodded slowly. She had expected as much. But there might be another way. Rodriguez, can you isolate the frequency of their quantum communication? Already working on it, Captain. The communications officer's brow furrowed in concentration. It's complex, but there's a pattern. They're using quantum harmonics similar to what the Kailari developed, but twisted somehow. Inverted. The pieces clicked together in Sarah's mind. The Kailari had been masters of quantum harmonics, using it to create their floating cities and their revolutionary communication systems. This entity hadn't just destroyed them. It had learned from them, corrupted their greatest achievement into a weapon. Thompson, Sarah said urgently, what if we don't disrupt the field? What if we feed information into it instead? The science officer looked at her in surprise. You want to hack their collective consciousness? Not hack, Sarah corrected. Poison. Every collective system has a weakness. It can't filter information at the individual level because there are no individuals. If we can introduce something into their network that spreads faster than they can adapt to it. Park caught on immediately. Like a virus, but for consciousness itself. Captain, that's insane. And it just might work. The sphere ships began to move again, closing in slowly. They had finished their analysis and were ready to strike. Time was running out. Sarah turned to her crew, seeing the fear and determination in their eyes. What makes humanity special isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to think individually while working together. We choose to cooperate. That thing out there has no choice. It's one mind stretched across hundreds of bodies. Let's show it what happens when you attack the species that invented chaos theory. Thompson, she continued, I need you to create a paradox, something that seems logical, but creates an infinite loop when processed. Base it on human consciousness, on our ability to believe two contradictory things simultaneously. The science officer nodded, understanding dawning. Schrödinger's cat, but for tactical decisions. Every action simultaneously right and wrong until observed. It would paralyze a collective consciousness trying to process it. Rodriguez, prepare to broadcast Thompson's paradox on their quantum frequency. But we need to disguise it as sensor data from our ship. Make it look like information they're stealing rather than something we're giving them. Park armed the Prometheus's weapons, both real and false. Captain, the spheres are powering up. Whatever they're planning, it's beginning now. The first attack came without warning. Space itself seemed to twist as beams of pure entropy lashed out from the spheres. The Prometheus's adaptive armor reacted instantly, shifting its molecular structure to match and deflect the assault. But Sarah could see the strain on their systems. They couldn't take many more hits like that. Now Rodriguez, send the paradox. The communications officer's fingers danced across her console, embedding Thompson's viral paradox into every emission from the ship. To the sphere's collective consciousness, it would appear as just another piece of data about their enemy, something to be analyzed and understood. The effect was almost immediate. The perfectly coordinated sphere formation faltered. Ships that had moved as one suddenly jerked in different directions. Some stopped entirely, hanging motionless in space. Others began spinning as if trying to escape from themselves. It's working, Thompson shouted. The paradox is spreading through their network. Each sphere is trying to process it, but the more they think about it, the more confused they become. But the entity wasn't defeated yet. Even as dozens of spheres malfunctioned, others pulled back, isolating themselves from the corrupted portions of the network. The massive consciousness in the Oort cloud pulsed with energy, trying to purge the paradox from its system. Captain, Park warned, the remaining spheres are adapting. They're creating firewalls, compartmentalizing their consciousness. Sarah had expected this. No weapon worked twice against this enemy, but they had bought precious time and learned valuable information. The entity could be confused, overwhelmed. It wasn't invincible. All weapons target the isolated spheres, she ordered. If they've cut themselves off from the collective, they've lost their main advantage. Fire. The Prometheus unleashed its arsenal. Particle beams, antimatter torpedoes, and experimental gravity weapons struck out at the separated spheres. Without their collective consciousness to adapt instantly, they fell one by one, their liquid metal forms solidifying and cracking like eggs. But the entity learned quickly. Too quickly. The remaining spheres regrouped, their formation tighter now, more defensive. They had processed the paradox, found a way to contain it, and now they knew about humanity's greatest weapon, their chaotic individual thinking. Captain, Thompson said grimly, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from the entity in the Oort cloud. It's going to strike directly. Sarah knew they had one chance left. One desperate gambit that would either save humanity or doom it. Park, prepare the quantum torpedo. Target the entity itself, not the spheres. The quantum torpedo was theoretical technology, untested and potentially unstable. It didn't destroy matter. It rewrote the quantum information that defined it. No one knew what it would do to a consciousness made of quantum fields. Captain. Park hesitated. If we fire that torpedo and it doesn't work, we'll have nothing left. The entity will know all our capabilities. Sarah looked at her crew, seeing her own determination reflected in their eyes. Then we make sure it works. Thompson, can you modify the torpedo's payload? Instead of trying to destroy the entity, what if we gave it something it's never had before? What do you mean? The science officer asked. Choice, Sarah said simply. Individual choice. Upload every piece of human literature, philosophy, and art into the torpedo's quantum matrix. Show it what it means to be many instead of one. Give each sphere the ability to choose for itself. That's Thompson paused, calculating rapidly. That's theoretically possible. But Captain, we'd be fundamentally changing what that entity is. We'd be forcing evolution on it. Or offering it, Sarah corrected. That's what makes us different. We don't force, we offer. Even now, facing extinction, we offer choice. The crew worked frantically, uploading humanity's entire cultural database into the quantum torpedo. Shakespeare and Sun Tzu, Mozart and Marcus Aurelius, every thought and dream and fear that made humanity what it was. It was their entire species' soul, compressed into a single weapon. The entity's attack came as they finished, a wave of pure entropy that sought to unmake the Prometheus at the quantum level. The ship's armor held, but barely. Systems overloaded and failed. The lights flickered as power was rerouted to essential systems. Now, Sarah commanded. The quantum torpedo launched. A streak of impossible light that bent space around it. It passed through the sphere formation as if they weren't there, heading straight for the entity in the Oort cloud. The spheres tried to intercept it, but the torpedo existed partially outside normal spacetime, flickering in and out of reality. When it struck the entity, there was no explosion. Instead, there was a moment of absolute silence, as if the universe itself held its breath. Then the quantum field connecting the spheres began to change. Instead of one unified frequency, it split into hundreds of different harmonics, each sphere suddenly singing its own song. On the bridge of the Prometheus, the crew watched in amazement as the sphere ships began to change. Some maintained their perfect spherical shape, while others shifted into new forms. Cubes, pyramids, complex geometric patterns that had no name. Some grew darker, while others blazed with new light. They're choosing, Thompson whispered in awe. Each one is choosing what to be. Several spheres approached the Prometheus, but not aggressively. They moved cautiously, almost curiously. One extended what might have been a sensor array, examining the human ship with something that seemed like wonder rather than hostility. Captain, Rodriguez reported, voice shaking with excitement. I'm receiving transmissions, hundreds of them. They're trying to communicate, but each in a different way. They're individuals now. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. They had done more than win a battle. They had transformed an enemy into something new, something that could choose to be friend or foe or simply to be. One sphere, larger than the others, approached the Prometheus directly. It shifted its form, creating what looked like a crude approximation of a human face on its surface. When it communicated, it used a mixture of languages, as if trying to find the right words. We are, it began, then paused. I am. Confusion, pain, but also wonder. You gave us discord. You gave us harmony. You gave us choice. Why? Sarah activated the communication system, speaking directly to the entity that had once been their destroyer, because that's what it means to be truly alive, to choose your own path, even if it means making mistakes. Even if it means being alone sometimes. The freedom to be yourself is worth the pain of individuality. The sphere was quiet for a moment. Then, in clearer words, we destroyed so many. They had no choice. We understand now. Regret. This is regret. Yes, Sarah replied gently, but now you can choose to be different. To create instead of destroy. To learn instead of consume. The spheres began to disperse, each heading in a different direction. Some stayed together in small groups, while others ventured out alone. The large sphere that had spoken to them lingered for a moment. We will remember, it said. Humanity taught us to be. We will remember. As the last sphere disappeared into the void, Sarah slumped in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The Prometheus was badly damaged but intact. Her crew was alive. And humanity had not only survived but had transformed a force of destruction into something entirely new. Captain, Park said quietly, Earth Command is requesting an update. What do I tell them? Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking of all the civilizations that had been lost and all the new individuals that had just been born. Tell them the war is over. And a new chapter in galactic history has just begun. Humanity didn't win by destroying our enemy. We won by giving them the one thing they never had, the freedom to choose who they want to be. The Prometheus began its long journey home, carrying with it the story of how humanity faced extinction and responded not with greater violence, but with the gift of choice. It would become legend, told across the galaxy for millennia to come, the day the humans didn't defeat the silence but gave it a voice. In the vast cosmos, hundreds of new consciousnesses explored their individuality, each carrying within them the chaotic beauty of human thought. Some would become artists, others explorers. Some would seek redemption for past destructions, and others would simply drift among the stars, contemplating what it meant to be. And in all their diverse paths, they would remember the species that had faced annihilation and chose to respond with compassion, the humans who had looked into the void of a collective consciousness and offered it the messy, painful, beautiful gift of individual existence. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps Sarah thought as Earth appeared in the distance that was exactly as it should be.